One of history's most famous executions may never have happened the way you've heard. According to one of Christianity's oldest traditions, one of Jesus' closest followers was led to a Roman execution site and made one final request. He did not ask for mercy. He did not beg for his life. Instead, he asked his executioners to turn his cross upside down. He believed he wasn't worthy to die in the same way as Jesus Christ. Whether every detail of that story is historically certain remains debated by scholars. But one thing is beyond dispute. Peter, a simple fisherman from Galilee, became one of the most influential people in human history. His teachings helped shape a movement that would survive persecution, outlive the Roman Empire, and spread across the world. But how did an ordinary fisherman become the leader of the early church? And what really happened in his final days? This is the story of the Apostle Peter. Long before he became known as Saint Peter, he was simply Simon. He lived in a small fishing town on the Sea of Galilee. Fishing was not a peaceful profession. It was exhausting, uncertain, and often dangerous. Nights were long, and success was never guaranteed. A family's survival depended on what came out of the water before sunrise. For Simon, life was simple: work, survival, repetition. Then everything changed. A traveling teacher arrived in the region. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. He approached Simon and his brother Andrew with a simple invitation: "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." There was no explanation, no promise of wealth, no guarantee of safety. Just a call. And Simon made a decision that would alter history. He left everything behind. From that moment, he stopped being just a fisherman. He became a disciple. Jesus would later give Simon a new name, Peter, meaning rock. It was not just a nickname. It was a declaration of purpose. Peter quickly became one of Jesus' closest followers. He was present during moments the others were not. He saw healings that defied explanation. He witnessed teachings that challenged authority. And he experienced moments that blurred the line between fear and faith. But Peter was not a symbol of perfection. He was impulsive, emotional, often the first to speak, and sometimes the first to fail. One night, during a violent storm on the Sea of Galilee, the disciples saw something impossible: a figure walking across the water. Jesus. Terrified, they cried out. But Peter asked for something even more impossible: permission to join him. He stepped out of the boat, and for a brief moment, he did what no human should be able to do. He walked on water. But then, the wind grew stronger, fear returned, and Peter began to sink. That moment would define him, not as perfect, but as human, as someone who could step forward, even while afraid. As Jesus' mission continued, tension grew. Authorities watched him closely. Rumors spread, crowds grew larger, and opposition became stronger. Before his arrest, Peter made a promise. Even if everyone else abandoned Jesus, he never would. But that night, everything collapsed. Jesus was arrested in the darkness. The disciples scattered. Peter followed from a distance, torn between fear and loyalty. In a courtyard, near a fire, he was recognized. "You were with him." Peter denied it. A second time. And a third. Each denial pulled him further away from the truth he had sworn to protect. Then a rooster crowed, and everything stopped. Peter understood what he had done. He left the courtyard and wept bitterly. For many, this would have been the end of the story, a moment of irreversible failure. But for Peter, it was not the end. After the crucifixion, Jesus' followers claimed something extraordinary: that he had risen. Peter encountered this message not as rumor, but as confrontation with everything he thought he understood. And then came restoration. On the shores of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus asked Peter a question. Not once, but 3 times. "Do you love me?" 3 questions, matching 3 denials. Each answer brought him back from failure. Each response restored him. "Feed my sheep." It was not just forgiveness, it was responsibility. Peter was no longer defined by what he had done wrong. He was defined by what came next. As the movement grew, Peter became one of its central leaders. In Jerusalem, he spoke publicly, despite increasing danger. Authorities arrested followers, threatened them, ordered them to stop. But Peter refused. "We must obey God rather than men." The message spread. from small gatherings to growing communities, from whispers to movement. But expansion brought attention, and attention brought danger. Tradition holds that Peter eventually traveled to Rome, the center of the most powerful empire in the world. Rome was not just a city. It was a system of control, law, and fear. And in that system, Christianity began to spread quietly through homes and hidden gatherings. But in 64 AD, disaster struck. A massive fire engulfed Rome. For days, the city burned. Entire districts collapsed into ash, and panic spread faster than the flames. Ancient historian Tacitus recorded that Emperor Nero, under suspicion of starting the fire, blamed the Christians instead. What followed was not justice. It was punishment. Christians were arrested, publicly executed, used as entertainment in brutal displays meant to warn others. Some were burned, some were torn apart by animals, some were crucified. The goal was not just death, it was fear, it was silence. Early Christian tradition places Peter in Rome during this time. Whether he was arrested during the persecution cannot be confirmed with certainty, but many early writers believed he was. And they agree on one point. Peter died in Rome by crucifixion. The exact details come from tradition rather than Roman records. But one detail became central to his legacy. Peter did not want to die in the same way as Jesus. So, according to tradition, he requested to be crucified upside down, a final act of humility, a final statement of belief. Even in death, he did not place himself equal to the one he followed. Peter never ruled an empire. He never wrote a philosophy. He never commanded armies. He was not powerful by the standards of the world that surrounded him. He was a fisherman, and yet his name is remembered across continents, languages, and centuries, not because he was perfect, but because he continued, even after failure, even after fear, even after loss. And that is why, 2,000 years later, his story is still told, not as the story of a king, but as the story of a man who followed a voice and never turned back.